Okie dokie. So before I lost any kind of videotaping light, I wanted to get this done. The project isn't done. I have to do the fit and finish of the wires and stuff. But for the most part, the hardest part is done. And holy Hannah, it took me forever to figure this out. No, it doesn't mean I'm stupid, but by golly, I mean, I'm no electrician. I can solder and heat shrink, and I had to figure out how, one, electricity works on my own, and two, how to wire this system up. Now, this will probably be my last video on the daytime running lights unless it magically decides to quit working somehow. So, I found out you cannot use diodes as a ground. With a ground, I should say, not as a ground. With a ground. Ground only flows one direction, and long story short, I had to use a relay, a separate relay, as my ground. Now, before we dive into, well, I guess it is what it is. Okay, so Honda's high beam bulbs have instead of having the power cut on and off, which it very well may be as well, but the ground, when you hit your high beam switch to turn them on, the ground circuit is completed. Otherwise, when the high beam switch is off, the high beam circuit, the ground for the high beam is open. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, that's how it operates. Whether that's how it actually is or not, how Honda actually did it, I don't know. I really don't know how they wired that circuit, but for all intensive purposes, their ground is open when the high beams are off. Which means the way I initially wanted to wire it was like the high beams had to be on so the ground was open. So I'm like, okay, so I need to have a hardwired ground for the little 12 volt to 6 volt resistor, or whatever they are, resistors, in order to keep the high beam switch off and the daytime running light mod on. So this is all being run through my 5-pin relay. Now, 5-pin relay, I guess this is the simplistic way for me. We have our ground, okay, grounded to chassis. We have power input, which is not to a battery, but which is tied to an ignition source. This ignition source, when the ignition is turned on, it automatically starts feeding voltage out through this yellow wire, which powers this relay, which is my switchable ground, and turns on my daytime running light resistors, which are powering the bulbs. Okay. This relay does not have to click to be feeding power. All you have to do is, all intents and purposes, hook this up to battery, hook this up to ground, and you have power coming out of yellow. Now, here's where the fun stuff comes in. This is being fed by my headlights. How I wanted this to work, I flip on the ignition, that turns on my daytime running lights. Easy, right? Now, I have my headlights. When I flip my headlights on, I want my daytime running lights to turn off. So this is tapped into the headlight fuse. Flip on the headlights, the relay is going to click. It's going to swap power from putting power out to this yellow wire to this blue wire. So there's no more power coming out of here once the relay clicks and the headlights are on, okay? Daytime running lights turn off, headlights are on, power comes out here. What I'm going to do is just cut this blue wire off flush. I'm not going to use that. Now, if you had this would be good for if you're doing low beams, like if you tied this into your ignition and you had to wire your low beam wire up here, perfect. You're with your key on, your low beams are on. Now, when you flip your switch, which would be this one, high beams would turn on. That's roughly how a 5-pin relay works. Now, I'm going to cut that blue wire off. That's not going to exist anymore. Now, back to the ground. Whoops, I'm sitting on a bunch of tools. Okay, so switchable ground, factory. Not going to work. I have to have a fixed ground for the daytime running light mod, the resistor, which is, how can I even get it up? That's what she said. Or he said. This is the daytime running. This is a 12 volt to 6 volt resistor. 3 amp max. I thought it was more than that. Anyway, whatever. We're going to run with it and see what happens. So, you cannot... Okay, so I'd have to show you how this is wired up for you to understand, for those who don't know how this works. So, this is power coming in to the resistor. Now, power coming out, and you got your ground. Power is run in. It has a diode in here, so power can only flow one direction. I want power to flow from here to the bulb, but not when I flip the high beam on. I don't want the power from the high beam coming back through this. That's why I put the diode in there. Same with the power wire from the high beam wire from the car. I put one in so power from this does not feed into the high beam circuit. Okay, I was thinking I could do the same thing with the ground. I don't want the ground from the car or from this powering I don't want the ground from this, which needs to be a constant ground, to feed into the ground for the car, because then that ground is always open or always closed then. So it's always the high beam would always be on then. So as soon as I turn on the headlights with no diode in between this, the high beam would turn on with the low beam no matter whether the switch was on or off. Okay, so you cannot use a diode in the ground, I found out. So what I ended up doing was taking the ground, which is here. What we're doing is making it a switchable ground. So it is a constant ground as long as the headlights are off. As soon as I turn the headlights on, this relay clicks off and the car is back to as if none of this stuff was here ever. Okay, so it's just kind of complicated and it looks like a mess. So the relay has to have a ground itself, so that's one wire to the chassis, and then the mod, that little resistor, has to have a ground, which is coming up to the, what right now is on open. It's open, okay? And then you have, I gotta think about it a minute here. You have one wire from the power coming from that, so as soon as the ignition comes on, it comes over here to what would normally be your switched ignition source to click the relay on. Okay, now I figured it out. So a ground wire from the resistor is coming up, and then a ground wire from here is coming to the chassis, along with another one, because the relay needs to be grounded to the chassis as well, or a battery. But, so you get two different wires, one for completing when the relay clicks on, and this little lever goes bing to 87, it's making a ground circuit completed instead of like using power through it. Because the easiest way to say it is, imagine this wire hooked up to your battery, or one of these wires. I don't know which one's which at the moment. Imagine this wire hooked up to your battery, this back one, and this one hooked up to a switch on your dash. One of these is on the right is going to be grounded to your chassis or your battery. And then when you flip your switch, this wire is going to get fed power to whatever you're trying to power up. Except I'm doing that with a ground. So ground coming off the resistor. When the relay is switched on, the ground circuit is completed to chassis, and the relay is grounded to chassis, and I have my switched ignition source coming from that relay with the ignition coming on. So let's show you how that works now that this is all explained, because if this is a mod you wanting to do on your 98 to 2002 non-Canadian Honda Accord, then you just figured out how. So we're flipping ignition on, Don't mind my blaring radio that's going to be on here in a second. Okay, now we have daytime running lights. Ooh, fancy schmancy. Let me turn it so you can see better. Okay, daytime running lights are on. Perfect, right? So, and you'll be able to see this against the shed here, or the garbage can there. I'm going to flip headlights on. Daytime running lights get switched off. That's exactly how we want that to work. Okay, headlights are on, parking lights are on. Then we flip on high beams. And now the ground from this relay, this relay was connecting the ground with the headlights off. Now that connection's been broken and it's back to being an open ground until I flip on the high beams. Kabing! High beams are on with the headlights. Like that's factory. So I just bumped the turn signal on, but yeah. So flip high beams off, low beams are still on. Flip headlights off, daytime running lights come back on. And it is kind of a little delay. That's probably just the way the voltage is going through that resistor. But there's our daytime running lights. Canadian vehicles came with this factory from 98 to 02 on the Accords. Only Canadian. Unfortunately, I would much rather have that on this car. Factory, they have a module underneath the dashboard where everything is just all hunky-dory. I think it kind of looks a little goofy, I guess, with the lights in the middle, but that's how it was from the factory. That's how I wanted it to be if it were a Canadian car. But that is exactly what I was after. Hopefully I don't burn the car down. So, I'm going to do a little update video later on after a little while of driving like this, just so y'all can see I didn't burn the car down, for one, and two, well, everything just works. Let's fire it up because I've been draining the battery a bit. But don't mind the squeaky belt. I've been doing that since I had the car, but there you are. Daytime running lights, a little bit of safety feature. People can kind of see you a little bit better, but golly, I tell you, what a lot of work to figure out. Now, I didn't look at any schematics to figure out how this worked or anything, so this is all my own doing and figuring out how things work. Boy, is it just kind of rewarding. So, and I could have parking lights on and daytime running lights if I so choose now. So that's interesting, right? So, yeah, buddy. I gotta tidy up the wires, cut the blue wire off, so that's not feeding power to any random thing under the hood. I gotta find the little clip to mount that relay. I gotta mount the other relay. I gotta solder this wire yet. Got some work to do, but for all intents and purposes, we have daytime running lights. Key off, ready? Yeah, there we go. Kabam! So, daytime running lights are off. Perfect. So, that's a decently long video. Hopefully it's not too difficult to understand. I have to explain it in the most layman terms for myself to understand. So, because I'm not an electrician, that's just... And I'm a visual learner. I have to, kind of like all the wires are where they're at. I had to kind of set all this stuff up. Trial and error, this didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And I finally figured it out. I finally understand how this car's high beams are operating. Finally got tapped into a headlight switch. All is decent. So, it's about time. That's rewarding. So, as some diodes get a little hot, so that's kind of what I'm worried about at the moment. But apparently the resistors get a little toasty too, so you got to be careful of that. That I'm probably just going to mount on the back side of here. I don't know about that one because that one's a lot, you got all that stuff over there, but that one's going to mount there, keep it out of the exhaust. That'd be good too, off the exhaust manifold. But just for the moment, I'm just going to tuck it up so I can drive it up to the house. But I need to cut that wire off, keep forgetting. Okay, so that's that. Hopefully not too much rambling. Hopefully easy to understand for those who don't know how to wire a car in this fashion. Yeah, go make your dreams come true. Frickin' right. Just make that my new motto. I tell you what, there's nothing better than having a dream and pushing through until that dream is real. So, and all you got to do is work for it. And that's a motto for D-Max Rhino something or other. Work for it. Because what's a dream without a little work? What's that? Teamwork makes the dream work, something like that. So, although there's no I in team, but yeah, I did it on my own. Oh well. Well, you know, other than finding out a little bit of 5-pin relay, 4-pin relay, just to get the wiring diagram. This pin goes here, this wire goes there, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to get the bumper put back together, all the darts and stuff, and get everything buttoned up enough so I can go in and score some dinner. So, hope y'all enjoyed. Ow, it just bit my tongue. Stay tuned for more updates, and hope y'all enjoyed. Leave your comments down below on any more mods you should you think I might do, should do, whatever. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm not done soldering because I got to put some new plugs for the new style fog lights on the wiring, so I can put bulbs in there and finally have fog lights on this new bumper. So then those mods will be coming soon, where hopefully I get some nice LEDs, possibly LED style fog lights, maybe like Morimoto. But anyway, I suppose. Thanks for watching. God